to maintain a specific radius when maintaining what's called a line of sight. So, before we can do an 8 on pylons, we need to make sure the student clearly understands two important things. One is pivotal altitude. So what is pivotal altitude?
Ground speed divided by 11.8.
That's how you can compute pivotal altitude, which is useful. But what is it?
The altitude that gives you the correct angle to which you could draw a line directly between your line of sight and the point that you're referencing. Sort of like if you were to draw a string, if you had a string from your head to that point, it will keep you at that.
All right. So it says pivotal altitude is the altitude at which, for a given ground speed, the projection of the visual reference line to the pylon appears to pivot. So that's the pivotal altitude. And you can compute it, like you said, with the what was it?
Ground speed divided by 11.8.
Ground speed squared divided by 11.3.
Oh, is it 0.3? Sorry.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, my bad.
Okay.
Seen 0.8.
All right. That's how you can compute it, which is good to know, really good to know. But then it talks about this visual, what did they call it? A visual reference line to the pylon. So what in the world is that? What is that? Because that's really important. If you don't really understand the line that you're trying to connect to that pylon, it's going to be hard to do a decent 8 on pylons. So if we got the airplane, we have a line that goes from our eyeballs parallel to the lateral axis to the pylon. So here's our lateral axis, wingtip to wingtip. Now here I am sitting in the airplane with my eyeballs attached, and I'm looking out parallel to the lateral axis. That's the line of sight I'm trying to maintain on the pylon. Now for me, in my seat position, it usually ends up being right around the little deflector for the recognition light, right close to the wingtip. Excuse me, right close to the leading edge on the wingtip. As you got longer legs, it's going to be a little bit further aft. You got shorter legs, it's going to be something forward of that. So, but that's only half of the story. That's only half of it. Here's the other half. There's my airplane, looking at it from the back. Got my lateral axis, wingtip to wingtip. And I got me in the airplane, sitting there with my eyes attached, parallel to the lateral axis. It says a little bit above that point, I got this way. Now I'm looking out, I got the point right here, but since I'm sitting above the wingtip a little bit, the line of sight parallel is going to be a little bit above that. Now I hear people say a Coke can. Okay, could be a Coke can, but it could be specifically what you see in your seat position. Now most of us do adjust that seat up and down to where we're pretty consistent in the position we're flying in. So the up and down isn't nearly as variable as the fore and aft. But they have to understand that that is the line, this way and this way, that we're trying to keep on the pylon all the way around. All right? Because sometimes people only get this part of the story, and this part is just say, keep the Coke can above. It doesn't really explain it much. Questions? Comments? Okay, so now we can do the maneuver. This is a ground reference maneuver. This is a ground reference maneuver, so we do have to find, we still have the same considerations. We have to figure out where the wind's coming from. We gotta have our emergency landing site. We've got to have our obstructions and houses and things like that all worked out. Same stuff. But then we've gotta choose pylons. And from my observation, that seems to be the hardest part for pilots. Figure out which pylons do I use. Often on check rats, commercial check rats, they say, okay, let's do 8-ounce pylons, and then where are those 2 pylons we used the other day, and they were good, Yeah, okay.
Yeah, favorites.
You just gotta pick 2 out. I don't care which 2 you use. But we have to figure out where the wind's coming from. So let's say it's coming from here. You want to pick out 2 pylons, and if you draw a line between them, it would be perpendicular to the wind, or fairly perpendicular. It's really going to be perfect. It can be perfect when I draw on the board, though. And you pick out 2 pylons. Pick out 2 pylons. So how do you pick out the pylons? What do you use?
Gas caps.
Gas caps? What's that mean?
On the wings, if you fly over your midpoint, the distance for me that, is about the closest in I want them to be is gas cap to gas cap.
So you pick out one point, and you fly and put your gas cap over that one, and then see what is under the gas cap on the other wing?
If I have 3 points, I have a midpoint in mind, and points on either side if I fly upwind to get set up to enter downwind, or 45 to downwind, but if I fly upwind over my midpoint, if they're gas caps apart, that sets
And if they're not?
It depends on how much wider they are than that. I don't want them any closer than the gas caps together.
Okay. Okay, that's a technique. I've heard some variations of that. Now, what sometimes people can do is they'll pick out one pylon and then fly perpendicular to the wind for say 12 seconds. And then it's after 12 seconds they see, well, what's there that I could use as a pylon? What's there that I can use as a pylon? And use it. And okay, that's another technique. You can use it once. Don't do it all the time. Because once you've done it, once you've done it, and you've got your 2 pylons, and you maneuver yourself out here, take a picture. Take a picture of it, so you know what it looks like. And then evaluate it. Did it work? How well did it work? If it worked pretty well, save. If it didn't work very well, delete. And get a different picture. But at least you've got something to start with. Because the next time you do it, you're going to have that picture, and you're going to have in your mind, I want it a little bit tighter or a little bit wider, and you'll just choose it based on that. So you don't have to keep doing those same technique things all the time. You take a picture, you try it, you save it, you delete it. The next time around, you just choose it, you do it. Second time you do it, you got twice as much experience at it, right? Yeah, twice as much experience. Twice as much data. And you do it a lot more than 2 times, don't you, in your training? So if you really pay attention, you collect the data, you've got a lot of things to judge by the time you get ready for a check ride as to what would be an appropriate selection of points. But if you don't collect data, other than where are those 2 points my instructor and I used the other day, you don't really have much to work with. You limit yourself. All right, so let's say that we've chosen these. Now let's say this is a 10-knot wind. And we're going to be making this maneuver at 95 knots of indicated airspeed. And just for grids, let's say that's true airspeed too. All right? We're not going to get real picky with it. So what would be my pivotal altitude here? You can use your calculator in the classroom. You wouldn't use it in the airplane, right? Most people have a little thing on the side or something they've memorized with different ground speeds and pivotal altitudes, and they just kind of swag it.
So it would be 975.
975. So what's your ground speed?
So the ground speed would be about 105.
105? Well, that would mean that the 10 knots would all be tailwind, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Now, if we're entering a 45-degree angle, that's not all tailwind. Here's where trigonometry comes in, right? Trigonometry. I had somebody explain it all to me. You know, all that stuff, like a professor would tell me, just go in one ear and out the other, but I grasped the thing that's important. Is that you take about, at a 45-degree angle, you take about 70% of your wind is going to be a tailwind. So, if I got 10 knots, 7 is going to give me a ground speed of about 102.
Okay.
Right? Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It might be a test question. Just saying. So now what's our pivotal altitude?
It's 920.
920. So we've got a pivotal altitude of 920. AGL. AGL. Pivotal altitudes are AGL. So elevation out there we'll say is about 30 feet or so. So I'm going to come in at about 950 indicated. Or MSL. MSL. So, I got the point. I got it straight. Now I come in here, I've got my midpoint. I'm going to come in here. And as soon as I see my line of sight approaching that pylon, I'm going to put in my bank in order to have that line of sight right on the pylon. Right on the pylon. Now, as I continue around this point, what do I expect to have happen with the pivotal altitude? It's going to decrease because I'm going to have less of a tailwind. So that just means in order to maintain that line of sight, there's going to be a little bit of forward pressure. Not control movement necessarily, but maybe a little bit of forward pressure. All the way around. I'm putting in a little forward pressure till I get here. That will be the lowest pivotal altitude. And I usually tell myself, don't go any further down. Don't descend any further. Because from this point, it's going to be a little back pressure to hold the pylon. A little back pressure to hold the pylon. I'm looking out here, I'm holding my line of sight on the pylon until I can roll out so as to come out here and do the same thing all around here, and then I'm done. By holding the pylon. Hold the pylon. Hold the pylon. All the way around. Hold the pylon until you roll out to go level again. So it's all about anticipation. You're anticipating what you need to have happen. Now, I read in the book there, you know, if the pylon moves forward, it's to the pylon, right? All that means is you've messed up. Here's how you fix your mess up. If you're doing it right, you anticipate it to where the movement is very subtle and it does not much. You know, it's not like, wow, I got forward. Ooh, I gotta get down. I got back. Oh, I gotta get back. No, it's anticipation. Pressure changes. Pressure changes as we come around. Anticipation. Okay? So it's a fun maneuver. Other than choosing the pylons, what's the challenge?
Over control.
Say again?
Over controlling.
Over controlling? Okay. Over anticipating?
Yeah.
Because that takes a little, you know, planning to realize, well, here's what I estimate the winds to be and how much changes are going to be necessary to adjust for those changes. So, what else?
Keeping them symmetrical. I know Panera, my truck ride, called it a dead snowman.
Is what?
Called it a dead snowman because one loop was
Yeah.
small, one was huge.
Yeah?
So
Yeah, that happens sometimes.
yeah, it was a challenge.
I taught him how to do good ones.
I still don't know how to fix that.
It's not hard.
Yeah,
It's not hard.
is my bank or is my point too
Well,
big?
here's what often causes that.
Yeah,
And I see it very often.
Yeah.
It's a common occurrence. So I'll put it in red.
yeah. It's fine if my pylons are like not.
Say again?
Like I can fix it if I do really wide pylons, but really narrow.
Now they're boring.
Yeah. But if I do narrow ones, I always have a dead snowman.
Here's what I often see. I see the pilot comes in and they come like this. And they say the pylons are too close. So then they have to do a tighter one.
Yeah. That's what I thought my problem was, but
Huh?
that's what I thought the problem was.
Yeah. So the pylons might not be too close. All I know is you really screwed up your entry.
Yeah.
You know, if you fix the entry part of it, and how do you do that? Because oftentimes what happens here is the pilot forgets to take into account the wind drift due to this wind. And they just kind of head towards that direction, and the wind's actually pushing them off. So you got to get the proper wind heading. Maybe you got your center point here, and you got something else out here, just like on a downwind, on a traffic pattern, to where you can kind of keep your orientation for track and get better.
Yeah.
You know?
The midpoint was what fixed it for me, kind of, because
Yeah.
when you come back around and you look down, you can see it further out. You know, you
Here's the
messed up.
thing, if you can't be perfect, and few of us are, you'll want to be a little closer to the first pylon than to the second pylon. Because if you're a little closer to the first one, it's going to really allow you to judge that rollout a lot better. I call that not perfect, but pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Not perfect, but pretty darn good. You know? It's hard to be perfect. It's almost impossible to be perfect. Every now and then you might have a really excellent day and you'll do something and you say, man, that was perfect. It's hard to repeat. Hard to repeat perfection. All right? But that's what I see oftentimes, is they'll miss that midpoint, and then okay, now they want like 55 or 60 degrees of bank to get that second pylon. You say, whoa now.
That's exactly what happened on the check ride.
Huh?
That's exactly what happened on the check ride.
It's
Yeah.
predictable, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's how you can fix it to make it not happen. Make it not happen. Yeah. Now, and here's another unfortunate thing that I've seen happen. You know, I'll see the applicant in the pre-flight briefing, they'll have it written down on their iPad, or not on their iPad, or a piece of paper, whatever. Pivotal altitudes for different ground speeds. And then they get up in here to do the maneuver, and for whatever reason, they enter at 800 feet. What happens? Well, they're lower than what they should be because of the wind. So as soon as they go into it, it tells them they're low, so they begin to climb. And by the time they've made that adjustment, they've turned far enough around the 8 to where they've really lowered the airspeed where it's time to descend. So now they push it, they descend, and they're just chasing that pivotal altitude all the way around. I call it sawing wood around a pylon. You know? And it's a setup. It's a setup. Don't want to do that. You know, we want to have the pylons at a distance that will give us about approximately 5 seconds of level flight between the pylons. That's not a lot. It's not a lot. About 5 seconds. And we like to have the steepest bank 30 to 40 degrees. I wish we could make it higher. I don't know why we can't, you know. I mean, even the pictures in the book has it going all the way up to 60. Right? 60 degrees of bank. But now they want to limit us to 40. Yeah.
I have a question about, you know, the picture you just had, there's one with the 3 rings and the cone.
Mm-hmm.
On my interview, Panera told me that was like really wrong. He told me during stanza, I learned why.
Really?
Yeah.
Set me up, huh?
I guess so. I'm curious why that's really wrong.
I don't know. I have to look at it. I have to look at it. Well, it's showing your line of sight not on the pylon. Not on the pylon. So it's trying to show you that if you're too low, this is what you're going to see with your pylon, and have to, you know, change your controls. But where I see the issue is that these ovals that they have here are not going to be the same as they're depicted in this picture. The ovals look the same. They're not going to look the same because your bank angle is going to be different. Okay, so I don't make a big deal out of it. I'm not sure exactly what he wanted me to tell you, but the fact of the matter is, it's a picture with the way it's presented, a little meaning. It's trying to show how the line of sight is going to be not on the pylon if you're not at the right altitude, which is fine, but you're not going to have the same circle at the same time either. So again, I don't know exactly what he wanted, but in the other picture, which is the one I like, is it shows you on the pylon in each one of them at 60 degrees, 45, and 30. And then they want to limit us to 40 on a check ride. I don't know if that's because the examiners get scared when you go steeper. For me, the steeper I go, the more fun it is, right? And the quicker it's over, so the less time I have to mess it up. And you'll find as the steeper you are, you're going through this side of the 8 much more quickly, which means the wind doesn't have as much time to affect you at any one point. So you'll find this thing here being much less. Okay? which makes it easier. More fun, easier, no downside to that. Okay? Oftentimes on checks and even stand plates, I'll see people choose pylons that are way too far apart. Way too far apart. And then you got those things where you got your bank angles about 20 degrees. And that's when they roll out and I start, one, two, just loud enough to where they can hear it, but not too loud. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12. And then they finally turn and just to make a point. This way, they get the message, right? They get the message. Your points are way too far apart. Your points are way too far apart. Get them tight. Get them tight. You know? And then they're fun. They're fun. Those things are all drawn out, shallow. They're boring. They're boring. They're no fun. And there's a lot more work involved because the longer the wind has to affect you, the more of this you have to do, and the more of this you have to do. So it's a more challenging maneuver, and it's boring. No upside. No upside. It's harder, no fun. You know, they let me use 55 degrees back. I use 55 degrees back. I don't know why they limit to 40. And then they give you these pictures of steep bank. Okay? Now, as you're, again, everything is predictable. As you're coming in on the pylon, and then as it's approaching, you're going to put in your bait to put it on the pylon, and you know as you're coming around, we're going to be having less of a tailwind, so we're going to be a little bit of forward pressure for the altitude. But what about the bank?
You're reduced.
Okay, so whenever you're descending, you shallow the bank. Whenever you're climbing, you increase the bank. They go hand in hand. So don't forget that. If you're pitching down, you shallow. Pitching up, you steepen.
I was gonna ask about that because I've heard different schools of thought on that, and some places say, well, which I wanted to find out what was here. I've heard some people say you shouldn't change your bank angle, even if it's gusty or windy conditions in 8's on pylons, and I've had several DPs
Well, how
tell
do you
me.
maintain line of sight if you don't?
Exactly.
Because, you know, if I'm looking down my wing and I get lower, I'm looking up at my pylon.
Yeah.
In order to keep the line of sight the same, as I go down, I've got to go shallower. As I go up, I got to go steeper. So to me, that's somebody that doesn't understand the full
Right.
definition of your line of sight. Because it's not just this way, it's this way as well. So to maintain the line of sight in the proper position, as the altitude changes, the bank changes. Has to.
My commercial instructor actually failed his CFI check ride for changing the bank angle, and he tried to fight it. He went with another DP, and he said, I did the exact same thing, and they said, those were beautiful. And he said, well, the first one said you shouldn't be changing your bank angle at all. You should set the bank
So
angle.
that DP
only.
didn't know what he was talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not unheard of. But you generally don't win an argument with DP.
Right.
Okay? You don't have to go with them again. Because you generally don't win an argument. Now, I've had, you know, as a chief flight instructor, I've gone to examiners that I think have misinterpreted some things for the ACS or whatever. And I, as a chief, not as an applicant, would try to present the information that I felt was pertinent. Sometimes they change their mind. Oh, okay. sometimes you get those hard-headed people, no matter what you put in front of them. Still an A. Still an A, yeah. But it's scrambled this time. So, you know, but I know as an applicant, you're not gonna win an argument with the examiner. It's unfortunate when you get an examiner out there that doesn't understand. We had an examiner for the VMC demo that said you have to be in zero science lab during your VMC demo. Where does that come from? So I went with the books
Wow.
and he changed his mind, and we didn't have problems after that. So, but I wasn't the applicant. But you gotta do things a little more diplomatic, I guess. I had one problem where we had a student that did the training here, couldn't get a check ride, went back home to California to do a check ride, and the FAA office out there said, you can't do it, you don't meet the requirements. So he called me back, as chief pilot, and said, they won't let me do a check ride. And I said, well, they're wrong, you know? Or not. Now I'm gonna call the, whatever it is, LA Center or FISDO, and tell them they're wrong. So I talked with the southern region up in Atlanta, and they said, no, you're right. So that went all the way to Washington, D.C. for Washington, D.C. to decide what was right and wrong and tell LA they were wrong. You know? So, it's challenging sometimes. It's challenging. Especially when everybody thinks they're right. and sometimes there's only one right. I've been wrong before. You know, don't get me wrong. I've been right. I've been wrong sometimes. Okay? So this is a challenging maneuver, but the biggest thing I can recommend to you is get those pylons close together and make sure that you work on that right there, getting the entry correct. Because if you don't get the entry correct, it's going to be your snowman.
Yeah.
Every time. And the fix isn't to come out of here and get here and abandon. That's what I hear people say. Okay, I'm going to abandon my pylon now so that I can get back here. Well, you messed up. You shouldn't be abandoning the pylon until you're ready to roll wings level to go here. Not abandon the pylon so you can come back up here and do it. That's not right. Okay? So, you know, there are some key things to make sure to get right. Okay? Any other questions, comments about made on pylon? Yes, sir.
Do you prefer the aim at the right pylon 45 or just a long 45?
Say that again?
Like, I know some people teach when you pick your right pylon, you aim it at then kind of last minute 45.
Oh, you mean one of these types of entries?
Yeah, versus a long 45.
Where did I my point? So where you got your pylons, you aim at this pylon and then you just turn?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Versus a long 45.
That is a technique.
Mm-hmm.
I don't use it because I want more time to figure out the wind heading to track. I like a little more time to make sure I get the right wind heading to track along here. You know? But it's a technique. If it works for you, fine. Doesn't sound like it worked.
I actually had better luck with the long 45. Yeah, so that's why
I'll use the longer 45 myself.
Yeah, it helps.
Gives me more time to really determine the wind heading that gets me the track I need.
Yeah, it's crazy. You fly a different instructor says something like that, and then it makes
Hey,
clicks.
there's
Yeah.
different techniques.
Yeah.
You know, try it. If it doesn't work for you, don't use it.
Yeah.
Don't keep beating a dead horse. You know, if it's not working, try something different.
Yeah.
Try something different. There's always another way of doing it. Always something else you can do change to make it come out better. Well, they say you keep doing the same thing the same way, you get the same results. If the result isn't desirable, you gotta change something else. Any other comments, questions? Well, that's the end of ground reference.